What does it take to change the world? A breakthrough idea? An unparalleled background in technology and execution? Rich, wealthy connections to Stanford investors? Over my 10 years of experience in consulting, in startup financing, and high tech in Silicon Valley, I've become convinced that we are profoundly mistaken in our conventional wisdom, in what it takes to make breakthrough technology succeed and to truly change the world. It took me a moment of meeting the Google X co-founder face to face to realize that the techniques that astrophysicists and laser scientists are using in Silicon Valley's most innovative laboratories are simple, repeatable steps that anyone with access to basic supplies can start doing at home right away. And even more excitingly, if we were to really realize this as a society, our communities, companies, and classrooms would never be the same. My journey toward learning more about innovation began when I was a young girl in Topeka, Kansas. When I was young, my greatest hope for the future of technology would be that we would invent a better remote control. And my greatest hope for government was that we'd find a way to keep the streets swept, particularly in the snow, while minimizing taxes for my dad's small business. Growing up in Kansas, I never imagined that a non-engineer could work for a company like Google. But in 2010, I found out, in fact, they could. And after a year of getting my ducks in a row, I applied for Google and I landed my first job there. Very quickly into my time at Google, I got the opportunity to help build tech support teams, to help make Gmail and other Google apps usable by businesses large and small around the world. We started off trying to train people from many cultures how to answer a simple tech question on the phone and resolve it so the customer could move on with their day. But over time, we started to realize that this awesome staff we'd built weren't just tech support agents. In fact, they were very skillful, very creative humans who could do a lot more for the humans on the other side of the phone than we'd originally thought. At first, we started small, helping new customers go from fixing an early problem to anticipating what might happen next. Then, if someone called with one question, we'd try and help figure out what was actually going on that they were trying to use technology to solve. And then finally, we realized that if we were really effective at helping our customers on the phone, we could help them bring technology to bear on their workforce in their company to power present and future goals that they found important. The most amazing learning for me in this process was actually that innovation doesn't have to happen only for teams that are developing software. In fact, when you can teach people to innovate, whose work involves other people, amazing things can happen, and things can transform with as small as intervention as one interaction on the phone. After I left Google, it wasn't long before I found myself in a very strange classroom in an innovation mansion on the border of Alamo Square in San Francisco. I stepped through the beautiful entryway, looked at the grand staircase coming down from above, and followed red rope lights into a mysterious basement that turned out to be a very curious place indeed. Here, Tom Chi, a co-founder of Google X, was unveiling the methods that Google X's engineers had used to develop breakthrough technologies that put the internet on floating balloons. I was very excited. And I was especially enthusiastic because the one thing our team hadn't figured out how to do was to solve a bottleneck in engineering talent. Basically, how do we get more technical skills and technical people to help bring our customer insights into real opportunities and tools for our customers? As Tom began to share, he talked about how a lot of the world's wealth runs through its largest companies, but companies don't actually develop all of the technology that they create. And whether they develop it or not, they tend to own the patents for 20 more years. What I started to realize is we couldn't just trust that the world's big companies would have a handle on the innovation that we really need to solve the problems we want to see solved in our lifetime. Instead, it was going to take a lot of people working together really quickly in order to tackle problems on the scale of climate change. And we were going to need to get started right away. As Tom shared the method, I started to become astonished because what I imagined would be a highly math-intensive, engineering-specific discipline really boiled down to 3 steps that Google X's engineers use over and over and over to reduce uncertainty and bring the future into present reality. Step 1, start with a skit. Step 2, build something basic using pretty accessible kindergarten level supplies. And step 3, change as you go. Again and again, they repeated this process. And in the room, we used Post-its and scissors to do the same thing. Start with a skit, build something basic, change as you go. Start with a skit, build something basic, change as you go. The more we repeated this process, the more it started to sink in. It wasn't just my team at Google that had everything we needed to move forward on building technology in our corporate context. But actually, the classrooms I'd grown up in Kansas had everything we needed then too. I was infuriated. I'm not sure where I got the message that in order to create the future, I needed access to the best science and technology labs and teachers who had 20 years of experience in data science. But at this point, I started to realize that if we all truly believed in this potential, a lot could change and a lot more people could be involved in directing that change. The next phase of my career was a 3-year stint testing my hypothesis that this was a basic process that anybody could learn. I taught people from 50 organizations, from the US Department of Labor to Girl Scouts at a science and tech camp. I taught corporate, entrepreneurial, and nonprofit sector leaders from Norway to Vietnam, and including the American Midwest. And the biggest insight I had from that journey was a workshop I taught to undergrads in central Iowa. The workshop began and everyone started, and very quickly, as I do, I said, let's get going, time to build, right? Yay! And this young woman named Chelsea looked up at me and said, I can't do it. I can't go forward. And I said, why not? She looked at me and said, you're asking me to create, and no one's ever even told me I can be creative. That's when I realized that there are thousands of creators besides my original self who don't even realize that we can create. And in fact, we are creating all the time. But our own lack of awareness that that's what we're already up to, and it's absolutely us who can do it, holds us back from really making headway on the things we care about the most. What I've learned over the course of this journey is that imagination and invention aren't hyper-specific technologies that no one can use. It's that actually, it's more like imagination is a muscle. It's a process that anybody can pick up, that you can exercise and develop. And by practicing in this method, you can begin to make real progress on the things you care about and your community cares about the most. And you can empower your workforce and your economy to do exactly the same. If we really live like imagination is a muscle, you all could make a huge difference, even in the rest of this week. Maybe you would start by looking around you for people with wild ideas who really could just grab a piece of scrap paper and start to draw what the wireframe interface would look like, rather than applying to another accelerator, or worse yet, quitting if they don't get in. You could look around at the groups, the communities, and the workforces that you are a part of for places where actually a lot more is possible than humans just doing routine activities. And if you did, you might find out that the unemployment graph, flipped, starts to look like capacity to innovate. And you could put your ear to the ground for some innovators, either likely or unlikely, who might not yet have been told that in fact they too can be creative. Returning to your routine today, I invite you to start this process by keeping an open mind for maybe a project that you haven't been able to move forward yet. Is there something that you can just put on a rough sheet of paper and hand to a friend to test? If you did, I think you might discover that you are far more inventive, even very rapidly, than you ever dared to think.